He's a Hall of Famer. He's a Fox NFL Sunday analyst, two-time Super Bowl champ, and I believe one of three coaches to coach a national championship team and also a Super Bowl winning team. Barry Switzer, Pete Carroll, I believe, are the other two. Jimmy Johnson joins us. Is that right, Jimmy?
I was the first one, and Barry followed me, and then Pete after that.
The difference between coaching in college and the NFL today, as opposed to when you did it, is what?
Dan, not too awful long ago, Terry Bradshaw asked me on the show. He said, "What's the difference in college coaching and pro coaching? And coaching the game?" I said, Terry, there's not a world of difference. There's a galaxy of difference. You can't compare. I could go on and on and on. If you're in one of the top 10 programs in college football, the difference in the talent is so vast. You're going to win 10 games just by showing up. So a lot of times it's hard to evaluate a college coach going into pro football. The other thing is, as opposed to grown men that are working for a living, in college, you're a mentor, you're a father figure. They're young kids that left home for the first time in their life. They've got all kinds of problems, girlfriend problems, academic problems. They're homesick. And so you end up spending half your time counseling them. In professional football, they're grown men working for a living. They have a job. And how well you do depends on how much money they're going to make. So they're a little bit more skeptical than a 18-year-old kid. The length of the season like I said, I could go on and on and on. I remember when Steve Spurrier went to the Redskins. He said, okay, he looked at the practice fields and he said, well, this is the offensive practice field. He said, is that the defensive practice field down there? They said, hey, you only got 53 players. We don't have enough players to have two groups going. It's not like college where you've got 100 players. But there's a world of difference between the two.
Where did Urban go wrong?
Oh, yeah. I think the mishaps have been chronicled, quite a bit. And I don't want to pile on. A lot of things happened. Number one, when I went to the Dallas Cowboys, I took the staff with me that I had at Oklahoma State. A lot of them had been with me at University of Pittsburgh, but they were my Oklahoma State coaches, and they were my University of Miami coaches. They'd been with me for 10, 15 years. So, there was never a chink in the harbor. If some disgruntled veteran might say, hey, we don't need to do it this way. Well, the entire staff would say, hey, wait a minute, we're going to do it the way Jimmy wants to do it. So there was never any discussion about how we were going to do it. It was one voice. With Urban, he had coaches from all over. And from reports, there were, some dysfunction, with the coaching staff. It's a difficult thing. He took over a job that was difficult, a team that hadn't won. But I did the same thing in Dallas. People don't realize Tom Landry was one of the greatest coaches of all time, but he had 3 straight losing seasons. And not only 3 straight losing seasons, they had the worst record in the NFL. So it wasn't a matter of coaching, it was talent. And that's the thing that I was able to do is, I was able to jumpstart it with all those trades by, bringing in more talent.
Did you pick Troy?
Yeah. Oh, please. I was in Troy's home when he was a sophomore in high school. Yeah. Yeah. In fact, I worked on Troy for about 3 years, and he was going to commit to Oklahoma State. And then his last weekend, he went and visited Oklahoma, and Switzer told him he's going to throw the ball, and he stuck him in a wishbone.
What do you think happened that weekend, Jimmy, with Troy?
Hey, young college kids, just like my oldest son was going to go to Stanford. We were all set, and he went and visited Texas the last weekend. Fred Akers called me and said, hey, Jimmy, says, Brent just committed to Texas. And my wife says, oh, no, he didn't. He's going to Stanford. those last weekends, those young kids, that sometimes they can be swayed.
You have coaches who are successful in college, and as you said, for a lot of them, you win 10 games, just talent alone. But then not that you get used to losing, but you have to be able to sort of accept it a little bit. Like you were losing that first year. I know you don't want to lose, but you can't let it eat you up, can you? Or did it?
It almost. I remember after that 16th game, I walked out with my Brenda Bushnell, who did my TV show. I brought her in from Miami with me. In fact, I brought the trainers, the administrative assistants, equipment people. I brought all of them from Miami because Jerry fired everybody after we got there. but I told Brenda, and she said, "Hey, well, Coach, I know that you're really down. I was just physically and mentally drained." And she said, "But we can tape your TV show tomorrow morning at 9:00. I said, "Brenda, get one of the assistants to do it. I can't do it." I said, "I'm going to grab Rhonda and we're going to the Bahamas. I got to get out of here." I mean, it's difficult. But now we made some moves. Now we traded away our only Pro Bowl player. I traded away the starting quarterback, Steve Pallure, to Kansas City. I released the leading receiver. So we made some moves that probably cost us 2 or 3 games. But I wasn't worried about that particular year. I wanted to make sure we built a team that could win in the future. And in the second year, had Troy not hurt his shoulder, we would have probably made the playoffs the second year. And so we were building for the future.
But were you in jeopardy of getting fired or quitting?
Oh, please. If I'd gotten fired, I'd made more money than what I did after 5 years because I had a 10-year contract. Yeah. I'd have had 9 years of bonus money.
When's the last time you got a call to coach?
Oh, I had quite a few, obviously after I left Dallas. And then I had quite a few after I left Fox. I had to make a decision between Philadelphia and Tampa and Miami. And, I wanted to stay in South Florida. I wanted to stay home. So, I took the Miami job, even though their cap was, horrendous. We were $5 million over the cap when I took the job. And then, after I left the Dolphins, most of the calls then were to be general manager or consultant or one thing or another. And I even had one team call and says, come up and run our draft. And I said, what do you mean run your draft? She said, come up and run the draft and pick the players. I said, I can't do that. I said, it'd take me 3 months to get, up to speed as far as the players. And I said, I can't go up there and make the decisions. Your general manager and your head coach, they're not going to like that at all. And I said, it won't work that way. Plus, you can't pay me enough money to, be away from home for 3 months.
So you told Dan Snyder no, that you wouldn't do it?
I'm not divulging the team.
Oh, all right. He's Jimmy Johnson, the Hall of Famer, joining us. Do Cowboy quarterbacks get too much credit or too much blame?
Oh, I think the entire team and every player on that team gets too much credit and too much blame. There's so much visibility with the Dallas Cowboys around the country, around the world. Every week, they're either the greatest it's ever been or they're the worst it's ever been. There's a lot of opinions on every Dallas Cowboy, and that's the way it is. You just accept that.
When I left ESPN, I didn't want ESPN to be successful. Now, I left on my own, but I don't know if after what happened with Dallas that you sort of, when you leave, do you leave and go, I hope that they aren't successful?
Yeah, no, there's a lot of people there that I really care about.
Yeah.
I've got a big stake in the Dallas Cowboys. And so I've got a legacy there that, I want the Cowboys to win. I pull for the Cowboys. I brought in Rich Dalrymple, even though he only worked for me. I brought him to the University of Miami, and then I brought him, to the Cowboys with me, And so there's a lot of people that I really care about. I want them to win. And Jerry and I have a strange relationship, but I want Jerry to be successful. I want him to win. He's the greatest businessman that's ever been, but I want him to win, another Super Bowl.
Has Jerry ever been on your boat?
No, and I haven't been on his his little boat either.
I think his boat's a little bigger than yours, isn't it?
Yes, quite a
bit. You had this quote about Dak Prescott, and you said he can win you a championship if you've got really good players around him.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there. I think that Dak Prescott's number one attribute is he is a great leader for that team. And you can say that about a lot of quarterbacks. Number one, any quarterback's got to have good players around him. To win a championship, any player has to have good players around him. But there are certain quarterbacks that could win more with less. Aaron Rodgers needs a few good players, but he doesn't need a whole team of good players. Trent Dilfer, wasn't as talented as Dak Prescott, but he won a Super Bowl because he had an unbelievable defense.
Yeah.
And so I think everything's relative there. I think Dak Prescott is an outstanding quarterback, but I do believe he needs, an outstanding defense and some great players around him to win. And right now he needs that running game to get going so that he can take advantage of play action passes and get the ball to those great receivers.
It was about a month ago, maybe a little bit longer, that you said on the Fox program that you'd take Justin Herbert over Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I've said that. In fact, I said that about 2 years ago, when they were talking about the draft. I was on Colin's show, and this is a week before the draft, and they were talking Detroit was going to take a defensive back, which they ended up taking. I said, take a defensive back. I said, would you rather have a defensive back or a franchise quarterback? You tell me. I said, Justin Herbert, take Justin Herbert. They said, well, you got Matthew Stafford. I said, I don't care I said, I had Troy Aikman and I took Steve Walsh. Quarterbacks are valuable. I ended up trading Steve Walsh for a 1, 2, and a 3. I said, let them have Matthew Stafford, let them bring in Justin Herbert. Then they can make a decision. They can move one of them. But, hey, a franchise quarterback is a heck of a lot more important than a defensive back. The other thing, Justin Herbert, he had everything that I was looking for. Yeah. And he's not the most talented quarterback in the league right now. He's not the best quarterback in the league. But as far as a guy that's only in his second or third year, with his intelligence, with his ability, with his arm to build a football team, I still say I would take Justin Herbert.
I love what I see with him. I thought it was going to take a little longer to develop, but what he's doing has not happened before. Like, you're throwing for over 30 touchdowns your first 2 seasons in the NFL.
And then he's only going to just get better.
Yeah.
As he gets more experience, he's going to get better. People criticize me for saying that they're the second week of the season.
Yeah.
And at that time, Patrick Mahomes was struggling a little bit. He wanted to throw the ball down the field. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes is one of the most talented quarterbacks I've ever seen. Mahomes has had a couple of injuries. Herbert is a big, strong guy. And, I liked what I saw.
If you could take Justin Herbert or Troy Aikman.
Well, yeah, I'm not real good at making those kind of comparisons. not with my buddy Troy.
I think Troy's okay with it.
I tell you what, Herbert reminds me a lot of Troy. Both of them very smart. Both of them work extremely hard. Both of them big and strong. Both of them got a strong arm, and so they're comparable. But I'm not going to choose.
So they're kind of like Terry Bradshaw was when he played.
Now that's a different subject. but he is. Actually, I helped recruit Terry Bradshaw. When he was a senior in high school, E.J. Lewis and I sat in the stands at Woodlawn High School. That was my first job coaching at Louisiana Tech. And I watched Terry play his senior year, and he ended up going to Louisiana Tech. But he was everybody's number one, big, strong quarterback who could throw it all over the field.
How did he end up at Louisiana Tech?
Terry had to tell you that. He lived right there in Shreveport, and in Ruston, it was only about 30 miles away.
So probably a mama's boy and homesick and wanted to stay close.
He's definitely a family man, as far as his family.
What do we see about Bill Belichick, or what do we not see about Bill Belichick and what he does? Because
Dan, he's the best.
But what is it though, Jimmy? Because you're one of my favorite, one of the smartest, football people I've ever been around. But Belichick just does. He seems to be on a different level.
Well, we've been friends for over 30 years. Back when he was at Cleveland, we made a few trades, and I was at the Kentucky Derby with him 30 years ago. And he comes down quite often, and we visit on occasion. To give you an example, one of the times he came down here to the Keys, and he's always got a little bit of an agenda, and I want to go on the boat and drink beer, and we got on the boat, and he started talking about the draft. And, he's saying, Jimmy, he said, this and that, we've got some extra picks here and there. And, he started rattling off the players that I had drafted when I was at Dallas. He had already done his homework. And some of the guys I had forgotten about. He said, you drafted those players, but your team was so good that, you weren't able to keep them. They made another team. You had to cut them, and they went to another team. I said, Bill, draft picks are like currency. They're like money. And I said, how every single draft, you're going to be in that round, and there's going to be 5 teams call you and say, hey, we'll trade you next year's 2 for your 3. I said, so bank some of those picks. That was one year that we fished. And then a year later, he comes down and he's talking about, I got 3 players that are wanting new contracts. So, and he started talking about some of the contracts that we had done. So he's always working to get better. I've sat with him and Linda and Rhonda and I at a restaurant, here in the off season. He's on the phone with agents talking about, hey, a free agent, hey, we'll negotiate, we'll do this and that. He's always working. He's the best. People want to compare great coaches of all time. And obviously you look at the Tom Landry's and the Chuck Knowles and the Don Shula's and everything else, but that was a different era. I mean, back then you built your team. That team stayed together for 10 years. You didn't have free agency. You didn't lose anybody. Today's football, I mean, you've got about 50 players or so, and you're liable to have to, middle of the season, you're liable to have to take somebody off the street and have him play that week. So I think coaching is more important today than it's ever been. Used to, you'd draft a rookie, he'd be on the bench for about 3 years before he ever played.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you draft a rookie, he's going to be playing it sometime during the year. So coaches have to be great teachers. They have to be better teachers than they've ever been. Now they've got about 25 coaches now, and they used to have about 7 or 8. So they got a lot of teachers on their staff.
How about a show, Beers on the Boat with? So you and you have Ditka, you could have Troy on there, maybe Jerry one day, Belichick. I can help you produce this. Beers on the Boat with.
If I start listing all of the general managers, the owners, the coaches, the pro coaches, the college coaches that have come down here, I've already had beers with most all of them. I mean, everybody, Bob McNair, Cal McNair, Tom Benson, John Shaw, Dean Spanos has been down here 2 or 3 times, Jeffrey Lurie, the same thing with the head coaches. So I've had beers with most of them anyway.
But now we film it. Now we film it, and you get paid.
We don't film it? Hey, if we film it, it's be about like what David Hill, one of the great TV guys of all time, when there at Fox. We have a production meeting on Sunday morning for about 15 minutes before we go do the show. And we would laugh and cut up and tell stories, one thing and another. He said, man, this is great. This is great TV. He brought a camera in the next week. We didn't say a word. So you put a camera on that boat. I don't think Belichick's going to be telling any Lawrence Taylor stories.
It just means you have to drink more beer. Hey,
Everybody gets quiet when the red light goes on.
it's great to talk to you, Jimmy. Thank you. Happy holidays, and we appreciate you joining us.
All right, Dan. Talk
Thank
to
you,
you
buddy.
later.
Jimmy
Okay.
Johnson, Hall of Famer, Fox NFL Sunday analyst, won a couple of Super Bowls.